So we're Peak Speak? We're Peak Speak?
We're Peak Speak. Yeah, so there'll be like an introduction music and then it'll be like introducing John Sheridan and Thomas Lilly, but in Chad Wesley Smith's voice.
I really think we could get Chad to do it. I think that would be hilarious.
Yeah. And then be like, here are your hosts, John Sheridan, the Canberra sharpshooter.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the blue corner, standing at a sleek 5'11", 245 pounds, the tumultuous tempest of technique, Thomas Lilly. And in the red corner, at a curvaceous 5'11", 315 pounds, the jovial juggernaut of judgment, John Sheridan. A meeting of the masters of mastication. Turn your attention as they delve deep into all things lifting and more. This is Peak Speak.
I feel like we could share.
So then that kind of fades out and then it's us sitting here. Because there'll be like an intro with names and explosions and stuff.
And explosions. And dogs.
And then we'll be like, hey, it's Thomas and John from...
Alright, cool. So, welcome to episode 1 of the Peak Speak podcast. This is Thomas Lilly.
That's me. This is John Sheridan.
That's also me. And this is our first real episode of this. We now have a name, Peak Speak.
Peak Speak.
We don't really care about what you think about our name. It's our name now.
But you think it's awesome.
Exactly. Jedis.
Alright.
Tricks.
Episode 1. Peak Speak. Systems.
Yes.
Let's talk about systems.
Let's.
So, today we're talking about...
Systems.
Systems.
Did we mention systems?
I think we did.
Have we mentioned systems?
Yes.
We just needed systems. End podcast.
So we're talking about systems-based approaches to training. So
Yep.
we're talking about the way that we believe is the best way to craft strength. You know,
Yeah.
that's our job as coaches, to take blank clay and mold it into something beautifully strong.
Beautiful is a very subjective thing, because some of our lifters are not the most beautiful things going around.
I don't look at faces, I look at technique.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Pretty technique.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that front.
Yes.
So, I think we both share this sort of approach to things, and this is as much us having this conversation together as it is you guys listening. So, I know that, I have an idea of how I do a system for, say, an individual lift or something like that, but you touched on earlier, we were chatting off camera about your approach to the system as a whole, right? And how you think about training and how to create success on that front. I'd like you to expand to the people of the millions of followers we have in episode 1 of the Peak Speak podcast.
Yes.
Say that 10 times fast, it'll get real confusing.
Yes.
So yeah, if you just want to sort of give us an overview of your ideas on that front and how you think about things.
Definitely. So, in my mind, a system is, a group of individual components.
Yep.
And that no system is going to function completely without good interaction of all the individual components.
Yep.
So, not starting with training, starting with nutrition. If we look at, just to give you an example, when people are talking about nutrition, oftentimes, especially in mainstream media, you'll see, X food is a bad food.
Yeah.
So, ice cream is a bad food, right?
False. Ice cream's the best.
Ice cream is the best. So, from a health professional standpoint, it's what does that food do to the system? How does that food impact the individual system? So, if we're talking about something like nuts being a bad food because they're high calorie, high in fat, well, yes, they are high calorie, high in fat. But what do they contribute to the system, or what do they take away from the system? What do they contribute? They can contribute, a good sort of fiber, a healthy source of fats, which is what we need. And if the rest of the system is fairly complete, if the rest of the system is fulfilling its role, then an individual component is not going to have as big of an impact, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, if the system as a whole is functioning well and there's room to add to that system, if we're talking from a nutritional standpoint, so say if you're working within a calories-based system and you're within your calorie requirements, but you've hit all the requirements you need for, you know, carbohydrate for energy and protein for recovery, you know, obviously simplifying that greatly. And there's still room within that to add some food that may not necessarily be good food, then there's no issue with that. So it's about taking kind of a broader perspective, assessing things on a whole. So if we're taking it to training, you know, people will fight so hard over the best program.
Yeah.
But the best program means nothing if other components of the training system are missing. If the technique's rubbish, then you're not going to maximize the results you're going to get out of the program.
I think, like, on that, like that, the best program, I did a thing a while ago where I talked about the idea that absolutes, like generally, anyone who speaks in absolutes, especially in training and nutrition, is often very wrong. Or just not as correct as they could be. Like you said, nuts aren't a bad food. They are a food. They can be bad, but they are not inherently bad. Mm-hmm. And I think part of any good system is the ability to be fluid and an ever-evolving thing. You know what I mean? Like, my training systems are much different than they were 10 years ago when I first really got into lifting, right? Because it has evolved over time. It's not a stagnant thing. What we're not going to do today is give you the system. We're going to give you an idea, I think, of how we think about the system as a whole and how you can start to develop your system. Because I think that's the important thing, is this isn't the system. This is a way of looking at things and an overarching view of things. Like you said, we're looking at the whole piece. And if you're caught up in this is the way, you're not going to look at any of the other things. And therefore, that's when you're going to start to lose, I think, pieces out of the system.
Definitely. And, you know, I look at you as a coach. You've produced some top-tier athletes. You've worked with some top-tier athletes. I look at me as a coach. I've produced some top-tier athletes. Worked with top-tier athletes. I have no idea what your programming looks like. I haven't seen a program of yours.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen a program of mine, but we know that our systems as a whole are doing something right, you know. And I know that your system isn't exactly the same as mine because my system's unique. Your system's unique. But like you say, there aren't absolutes here. No. And if the system as a whole is pretty sound, you're going to produce good results.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that, like, sort of gives us a bit of a breakdown of our approach to that idea, and I'd like to maybe touch on what makes a good system. I think the first step to that would obviously be that it has to be relatively fluid, right? It has to have the ability to change with time, because I think not only because, like, your ideas around training and, you know, those sort of things change, but also because your needs change. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, going back to a nutritional standpoint, and I do not in any way, shape or form pretend to be well read about nutrition. But I think in that standpoint, like, the system that you would have for someone who is morbidly obese and doesn't have any concept of what any sort of reasonably sustainable eating pattern would look like is going to be vastly different from something you would give to someone who's an elite athlete in their chosen sport. Mm-hmm. And I think the ability to have a system that is fluid because the needs or the output of that system is going to change over time, that's got to be one of the more fundamental things to any system. The ability to adapt to things and to scale to things as well. I think, like you said, we've both worked with some relatively high quality athletes, but at the same time, I know we both work with complete beginners.
Definitely.
And the system works the same. Mm-hmm. Maybe the inputs are different because you go from someone who's never lifted weights in their life versus someone who's been lifting for 10 years and is at the peak. Mm-hmm. Those inputs are going to have to be different.
Yes.
But the ability to have a system that scales across those ranges from complete beginner to elite, I think, is a really important thing that a lot of people miss. Like, a lot of people, especially in the age of social media and Instagram, everyone looks at the best and has this idea that they should be doing what the best are doing. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, this is what Dan Green does in his squat training. Yes. Maybe I'll do that. It's like, well, are you Dan Green? Uh-huh. Have you been lifting weights for as long as he has? Probably not.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you should look at something that Dan Green was doing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to pick a system that's too advanced for them, and not having the ability to scale that system.
Definitely. I'd agree with you on that one as well.
What else do you think it makes is an important characteristic in a functional and relatively successful system?
I think having the bases covered.
Yeah.
I think having things that aren't missing.
Yeah.
For the system to work as a whole, each individual component has to be sound.
Yep.
I'm going to come back to the example I used before. You can have a great program without a good technical base. The system's doomed to failure.
And the thing with that, especially in powerlifting, you can get really fucking strong with a reasonable program and shit technique.
Definitely.
And eventually, you're going to either get really badly hurt or get to a point where you stop making any progress. And I've seen it, and I know you've seen it. People have some great training program that puts heaps of weight on their lifts for the first 2 years, and then you never hear from them again. Because either they got hurt or they got sick of not making any progress. Because they didn't have that other input. The programming input was perfect. Yeah, the best training program in the world. But like you said, if you don't have the other inputs, you're screwed. And the failure might not happen immediately. It might take a couple of years to get to that point. Because your body, bodies are inherently really fucking good at adapting to stress and changing inputs on that front.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think having those pieces nailed down is definitely one of the more important parts of that.
Definitely. So
I hate the word holistic, but it is a useful word in this circumstance.
Yeah. So, learning to cover all of those bases. Listing them off, the top things that come to mind, I think technique is at the crux.
Yep, I totally agree.
I think technique is probably the biggest determinant of progress, because it comes back to what is the strongest, what is the safest, what is the most efficient way to lift the weight, which is going to lead to longevity. Following on from that, programming, recovery methodologies, rehab, mobilizing stuff, looking after yourself, movement stuff. Yeah. Then there's the nutrition side of things, the recovery, the sleep, the mindset. Knowing how to approach lifting and not burning out mentally as well as physically, knowing how to structure the system across a year or a couple of years of competitions. There's so many facets that make it up, and you can be quite unprecise with a lot of them, and like John said, still make a huge amount of progress. But that's, getting the system right, understanding the individual components, putting it all together is going to be the difference between a good lifter and a great lifter, or a great lifter and the best lifter.
Yeah, 100%. I would like to really delve a little bit deeper into the technical side of things. Like, for me, the important part of the technical aspect of your system is that it is a system unto itself.
Definitely. So there's microsystems within the macro system.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think to be technically proficient at something, you have to be able to make it look exactly the same with an empty bar as your max weight. I despise the really common saying that is, it's okay for your technique to break down under max load. I don't think it's okay at all. I think at a certain point it will happen.
Yes.
But I don't think that's okay. It certainly shouldn't be what's happening the majority of the time. I think the best way to be very strong and be able to do it for a very long time is to, like you say, lift it in a very efficient, very safe and very strong manner. And to do that, you need to be able to perfect your lifting system.
Definitely.
I think they are obviously going to be different. Like, you and I squat differently. We are built differently. I'm clearly the more handsome of the two. But I'm sure we have fundamental principles that underpin the same things.
Absolutely. So the way I look at it is that there's rules.
Yeah.
There's rules that apply to everyone, no matter what individual differences there are.
100%.
So, breathing and bracing, how we're going to engage our core, how we're going to lock everything in, is going to apply to everyone no matter who you are.
Yep.
Where you set your feet might be a little bit different case to
100%.
case. Where you set your hands on the bar might be a little bit different case to case. How you engage your shoulders should be pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So there's certain rules within that system that are going to apply to everyone, but then understanding the unique differences that we need to consider for individuals is important as well. When you were talking about breaking down at the top end, I think it's important to say here that the gold standard, the best lift, is going to be the most technically proficient because it's going to be the most efficient.
Yep.
So the perfect lift should have no technical breakdown.
Yep, exactly.
Right? So when people justify that, it's okay because it's heavy. It's like you're saying, well, no, it's not okay because that's potentially what caused a mislift. That's what potentially meant the difference between a 300 kilo squat and a 302.5 kilo squat.
Yeah, exactly. It's that rate limiting factor.
Yeah. There is the flip side of that. I'll play the devil's advocate here in that understanding, if I take a lifter and I can perfect their technique with 50% load, understanding that in a 12-week period that they may have paid me for coaching for, and they're coming to the top end of the competition, I'm not going to let some minor technical breakdown be the difference between them reaching their full potential at that point in time.
100%. And I think there's, on that, I say that in a fairly staunch manner, but I really mean, I think too many people are guilty of excusing poorly performed or poorly executed lifts using the excuse of weight. Mm-hmm. I think that's complete bullshit. I think that is the best way to find out who you are, is to put a lot of weight on the bar and see how well you can do it. And at some point you'll probably have something break down, but that's a great way of identifying where your limiting factors are and what you need to work on. But I don't it certainly shouldn't happen every week. Mm-hmm. Maybe it shouldn't even happen every year. Maybe once a year you hit a lift that is so heavy that your technique breaks down. Uh-huh. But I think if your training system is good, your technical system is good, your program is well thought out and well sort of, spaced out in terms of where you are in competition and things like that, I think you can do, I certainly think you can get away with not missing anything in training, and then put yourself in a position where you can be on the platform and hit lifts that are actually well above your training lifts because you've developed your system in training. Mm-hmm. I think I use the squat as an example in this front. A lot of people talk about this idea of fearlessness, right? I fucking hate that idea. Fear is the most fundamental human reaction we have, right? It's innate. It is, bred into you. There's nothing you can do about it. Mm-hmm. I generally think that people that are fearless just don't understand the consequences of what they're doing and are maybe not the most intelligent people in the world. You and I have both lifted some heavy weight, right? I've squatted over 400 a few times. Getting under that, it's fucking heavy. Uh-huh. And it feels fucking heavy. Uh-huh. And there's always that moment where I unrack the bar and I go, oh fuck. And I refer to it when I talk to people about it, especially new lifters, because they're not used to that feeling. Uh-huh. But it's the idea of having that oh fuck moment. That's an okay moment. You're allowed to have that moment. And you probably should, because if you don't, their weight's not heavy enough.
Yeah.
But then it's the ability, and I think, again, what separates a mediocre lifter from a really good lifter is the ability to have that oh fuck moment and then do it anyway.
Yeah.
And then, because then at that point what you're doing is you're falling back to your system. This is what I've done thousands of reps in training for. To have that, oh fuck, no, you know what you're doing, set it, go. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think that is where the technical aspect comes in. That's why you should treat an empty bar like it weighs what your max does.
Yes.
Because I think too many people are guilty of just warming up for the sake of it. Mm-hmm. Right? Everyone talks about the physiological benefits of warming up, right? You're increasing your body temperature, you're increasing your muscle elasticity, you're moving better, all those sort of things. I actually think the two most important parts of warming up are the opportunity to practice a perfect rep.
Yes.
And the idea to use it as a self-assessment. Uh-huh. What feels wrong today? Uh-huh. What can I work on today that's going to make me better next time?
Uh-huh. So you just hit the nail on the head in terms of one of the biggest things and probably the most the thing that I say the most often in my coaching is that every single rep is an opportunity. You use the word opportunity to improve.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what weight is on the bar. Every single rep that you do is an opportunity to practice, an opportunity to get better. The next time you max out, your technique under that max weight is going to be the average of what you've done in training.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
If the general average is perfect technique, guess what's going to happen when you get under that max weight?
Yeah,
the
exactly.
only limiting factor is going to be weaknesses or freak occurrences. Something goes wrong. Something that shouldn't happen happens.
The 1%.
Yeah, exactly. Ideally, the average rep should be perfect.
Yeah,
and if you
100%.
think about it in terms of a training day, let's say someone going up to 100 kilo squat for 3 sets of 3, a fairly new lifter. The way they're going to warm up, they're going to hit the bar for 10. They're going to hit 40 for 5 or 6. They're going to hit 60 for 5 or 6, maybe 80 for 3. And then 100 for 9 reps. So all the reps have done before they get to that 100 kilos. All the opportunity to improve, to practice, to get better is before that working set. So if you're only thinking about technique, by the time you're at your working weight, you're losing the battle.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is where, the advent of the smartphone is an amazing thing, right? Like, when I got my last phone, I got an iPhone, and I got the big one, because I wanted the big screen.
Uh-huh.
I film almost every set I do. I don't put sets of me doing 60 kilos on Instagram, because A, no one fucking wants to see that, and B, I don't get anything out of it. I'm not filming it for anyone else's benefit.
Yes.
Literally, I will film it, watch it, and then delete it. Or I just fill up my fucking computer with videos of me squatting 2 plates.
Yeah.
But it is that opportunity to do a set, go, okay, this is what it feels like. Here's what it looks like. How do I marry those two together? Because I think the thing that a lot of people lack is that self-awareness in terms of how they move. And this is where we go back to the thing you said in the episode 0. Get a coach, because you have then someone whose eyes are better than yours. You and I will see things that the average lifter doesn't see, because we've just watched more people lift than the average person. But I think, my gym, I haven't actually stepped foot in your gym, but I'm sure it's like mine. There aren't any mirrors in my gym.
No, definitely not.
Because what you see in a mirror isn't what's happening. Being able to film it from a third person perspective is going to really help you improve that self-awareness and the ability to perceive where you are in space. Proprioception, that's, if you want to get technical about it, it's proprioception, the ability to feel where you are in space. And I think that technically is one of the most important aspects of lifting, because if you can't feel it, it doesn't work. You're not going to be able to improve. The first question I ask every lifter I do is, how'd that feel? And most of them say, yeah. It's like, well, that's not a fucking answer. And so you've obviously then got to delve deeper into that. But the other one I really like is, which one of those reps was the best? Because it forces a lifter to think critically about it, right? Because this is what this whole thing is about, is thinking critically about things.
Yep.
I don't think you and I are going to produce a podcast where it's like, these are the ways you do it. Here's the facts. Here's your 12-week program, off you go. I think, we haven't really talked about this, but I like to think that we are both trying to promote a bit of critical thinking.
Definitely.
I think that's an incredibly important part of just being an adult, the ability to think critically about things.
I don't know, I'll let you know when I become an adult.
Yeah, me too. But I think that critical aspect of, you're not just training for the sake of training, right? If you really want to be good at this, if you really want to be able to do it for a long time, you have to think about it. It's a very mindful pursuit, right? It's not just mindless exercise.
Definitely.
If you want mindless exercise, there are plenty of fucking options for that. If you want to be really good at lifting weights, you need to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's...
You need to become better at lifting weights.
100%. It's a skill. Strength is a skill. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people forget that there's a huge skill element to that.
One thing I hate is this downplay on the technicality of powerlifting.
Yeah, 100%.
It's okay, well, Olympic lifting is technical, powerlifting is more brute strength. No, hang on. Let's think about this for a second. We need to be very technical about the way that we lift, because that's how we get better at lifting. That's how we lift more weight.
Yeah, 100%.
More weight is not just about putting more weight on the bar. It's about getting better at lifting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I know in my own coaching, I don't just measure progress as kilos on the bar.
Definitely not.
Because often I've had lifters come to me who are quite strong, and actually they've had to take a few steps back, because what they've done is got strong with a really shit system. like a really terribly thought out practical sort of theory based or practical technical approach to things, that is their limiting factor. And so what we've got to do is bring that back a bit, build them back up again, give them the tools they need to create their system, and then start down a more efficient, more technically sound path.
A real classic practical example of this is deadlifting, right? So people will often say a sumo deadlift should be hard off the floor, easier at lockout. A conventional deadlift should be fast and easy off the floor, harder at lockout. That's total bullshit. If we're thinking about biomechanics, if we're thinking about physics, both styles of deadlifts should be really hard from the floor.
Yeah, that's where all the inertia is.
Exactly.
That's why it's a deadlift.
And that's where all the moment arms, so, in terms of biomechanics, are longest, which is the hardest part.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to do, right? So what happens is that people make a compromise through back tightness. They get some rounding because they apply speed into the bar. And then when you take a lifter like that who's developed their strength in that pattern and are fairly strong, and you pull them back and you teach them to learn how to brace and hold the position, normally you don't get a net change in speed. Normally the speed is the same. It's just the average of where the speed is happening is different.
Yeah.
Instead of being really fast and then really slow, it's really slow and then really fast.
Yeah.
And getting lifters to change that and understand that is quite difficult, taking that step back to making things feel hard and taking that mental kick to where a weight that used to rocket off the floor now feels heavy.
Yeah, horrible. Yeah.
Heavy and horrible is quite difficult. But
And it's an ego thing at that point as well.
yeah, but it's all so important in the pursuit of taking you from where you are and getting to the next step. It's not necessarily linear. Sometimes we do have to take a step back or have to throw on a curveball to get to the next level. And that's our job as coaches, is to assess where people are at and do everything we can to get them to that next step. And sometimes the best thing that we can do is hold a lifter back.
Yeah, 100%.
Or pull a lifter back and relearn a skill. And that takes time.
Yeah, and look, I have in the past talked people out of joining my gym. Not intentionally, but because I've come out and said, this is my approach to things. Mm-hmm. It might not seem like it to you, but I will always have your best interests at heart. Sometimes, I know from a coach's perspective, I know more about your best interest than you do. Mm-hmm. Because I have a slightly more broader view of things. There was one distinct example where this young, she would have been 18 or 19. This girl came in and she wanted to get into powerlifting. She'd done some figure bodybuilding stuff and was quite strong based on the numbers she told me. She was like, oh, what's it going to take to win this novice comp in 6 weeks? I'm like, well, look, that's not really what novice comps are about. Here's some random numbers. I don't really know. I've never seen most of the people that are going to do this comp.
Don't know what numbers are going to go.
I have no real idea. But also, that's kind of not the right approach. You need to look at, we're going to look at the technical side of things. All the members that come through my gym get coaching sessions with me to begin with. We refine their technique. We create their systems, or at least the fundamental underpinnings of their system, right? Mm-hmm. And it got to a point where she goes, look, I don't know if I actually want to do this. I'm used to just being really good at things straight away. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, that's not fucking how life works.
Yeah.
But also, if you want to be really good at it, you need the technical prowess. You need to put the time, and to be honest, you have to earn the right to lift heavy.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one thing, the accessibility of our sport, and the perception that it's just squat, bench, deadlift.
Yeah, it's just lift
and
weights.
not a sport.
Yeah.
Is one of the downfalls.
100%.
I wouldn't walk into the local tennis club and be like, hey, 6 months, I'm beating Roger Federer and you're going to tell me how to do it.
Yeah.
But for some people, that's how they, that's how it appears they come to us for powerlifting is, here's me, I want to do this record, that record, this record, win this comp. Well, hey, you have to respect it as a sport. Hey, you have to respect that there are people that have put years and years into this and that are going to kick your ass for a very long time. And people don't like that. For some reason, with lifting, people really don't like to hear that.
No, not at all. And on the earning, funny side note, I train this girl who I've been training now coaching for a year and a bit. She was going to do this novice comp with her mum and her sister who had done my powerlifting fundamentals course. And her dad had been talking some smack about how maybe he was just going to do it. He was like, how hard can powerlifting be? And she said exactly that. She was like, you have to earn your right onto the platform. What she didn't know is I'd actually been coaching her dad for 4 months in secret. And we'd been working together this whole time, and he had earned his right. But it's the same thing that I say to everyone. Like, you really do have to earn the right to be good at this sport, right? This is a sport of months, years, and decades. It's not an overnight thing. The idea of an overnight success is you don't see the 10 years of work they put in before that. And, you know, it's a... So we had another minor camera malfunction because we're #professionals. But I think we've sort of covered nicely the whole macro look at the systems approach to lifting and how that is made up of many pieces, and how if you really want to be at the top, you're going to have to develop all of those pieces, both separately, but also as a whole. Like, obviously, you're going to have to improve your technique. You're going to have to continue to get better in your programming skills. You're going to have to continue to improve your nutritional systems. But you can't just push with one and expect the others to keep up. I think that's the really important thing that a lot of people miss is maybe they do start improving their technique, but their programming still sucks. You know, they're maxing out 4 days from a comp or something stupid like that, where then you're bringing your whole system down because one piece is letting you down. So I think it's important to emphasize the need to have a sort of fluid approach to the whole thing, but be able to build on it over time. Like, it's a fluid system. It's not something that is set in stone. It evolves over time as you the lifter, improve as a lifter, as a coach, whatever it may be, but it's got to continue to evolve over time, because that's like, you know, otherwise you're stagnating and then you may as well be dead.
Definitely. So, I mean, one really important thing from a coaching perspective is being very confident in your system at that point in time.
Yeah, 100%.
You need to be able to say, this is the right way, this is what I want you to do, and be able to justify it with any questions that come at you. At the same time, you need to be willing to learn new things.
Yeah, 100%.
And then, like you say, be fluid with your system, be able to change that system to apply to your lifters based on new things you learn, new evidence that comes out. Because, you need to evolve as you grow as a coach, just as much as if you're doing it yourself as a lifter, you need to evolve your system to cater for where you're at in your lifting life.
Man, I look back at some of the things I was doing as a coach 4 or 5 years ago, and they're embarrassing. But that's because at that time, like, that was what I wholeheartedly believed in. That was what I was, preaching, for lack of a better word, because to the best of my knowledge at that moment, that was the best way to do things.
And I think we were talking about a lot of lifters we watch rise and fall. I see the same with coaches.
Yeah, 100%.
I keep a close eye on what happens in Australia because I really like what happens in Australia. I don't actually follow many, international lifters and coaches.
Yeah.
I'm really involved in what's going on in my own backyard.
Yep, as I think you should be.
And you see a lot of coaches, normally become really good lifters. Okay, I'm going to become a coach. And then
the age-old, you're a good lifter, that must mean you're a good coach.
Yeah, that old hat. So, and then you watch these coaches kind of rise and fall. And I think one of the things that happens is this blurred line between confidence and cockiness.
Yeah.
You need to be really, as a coach, this is coming from a coach's perspective, you need to be really confident, really firm in your ways at any given point in time, but not to the point where you become cocky about it, like, it's my way or the highway, and my way is the best, and it's always going to be the best.
My way is the way.
Yeah, it's about taking an understanding of the lifting world, bringing it to your system, applying that, and then as your understanding of that lifting world changes, you need to change it with it. When you become cocky, you block off that understanding, and it becomes you.
It's a closed-minded view of things. Exactly. You have to be open to these things, and this is why I like spending time with you, because and other people like you, because I learn from everyone, right? Like, that's, I think you can learn something new from everyone. Maybe you don't agree with it, but often, like, I've disagreed with someone on something, tried their way, and gone, actually, no, you know what? I agree with you now. Like, I've changed my mind. And I think a lot of those people that blur those lines between confidence and cockiness don't have that. They don't have that ability to accept criticism or to accept an alternative view of things. Mm-hmm. And I think, like you said, as a lifter or as a coach, both of those are important, or that is an important skill for both of those aspects. I would argue probably more so as a coach, because you are inevitably going to be stuck in a position where you start to go downhill very rapidly if you're not open to change and to evolving your processes. But I think, equally as much with the lifter, if you're not open to new ideas or new training programs or different ways of thinking about technique or different aspects of your lifting, that's going to become that rate limiting factor.
Definitely. The telltale sign is that stagnation.
Yeah, 100%.
So when a coach stagnates, none of the lifters make progress. When a lifter stagnates, they don't make progress.
Yeah.
And that's when
Or they get hurt.
Or they get hurt, exactly. And that's when you know there's a failing within that system.
Yeah.
So it's our job as coaches and as lifters to be, like you keep saying, fluid with that system and finding a way to make sure that we don't stagnate, that we're continuing to make progress and not getting hurt, all that kind of stuff. So I think from here it's that's a really good view of the overarching systems sort of theory. And in terms of moving forward from here, we'll go into separate episodes where we break down programming, where we touched on technique today, but I think there's a whole episode there waiting on a really delving into the technical side of things.
I think more so like in just the squat, in just the bench press, in just the I think we can do a whole episode on each of those things. There are so many things to consider in all of these things. Like you said, it isn't just lifting weights. Mm-hmm. Like in many ways, it's just lifting weights, but in a lot of other ways, it's not just lifting weights.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's just lifting weights that are heavier than what John's lifting. So,
except in a squat.
I'm talking about without the aid of power tools.
It's just weights, bro. No weight classes in the jungle.
Oh, dear. Okay, that's right.
Until next time.
Thank you. Remember, big dogs gotta eat.
They do.
That's what Kev always says.
# spew for Kev. Tell your friends.
See you next time. Fuck, I don't know how to finish these things.
I'm going with tell your friends. That's my thing now.